Hi, you're Karim.
Yeah,
Your artist name is Boutique Feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're hip hop with psychedelic influences.
Yeah, definitely. You could definitely, or alternative hip hop, something like that. But yeah, it definitely ranges from, at the core of it, it's hip hop. That's what it is. But it definitely ranges from hip hop to psychedelic to alternative funk. So yeah, it kind of jumps around a bit. But yeah, at its core, it's definitely hip hop.
Yeah. And you released your new album, 21st of November.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. It's called Shwaya Shwaya, which in Arabic means slowly, slowly. It's the first full length, yeah. So it. A lot of the guys actually that I'm playing with, including Vanessa, they played on the record. So yeah, I released it through Mothland, and it was a fun experience. It was the first time that I did basically most of it on my own. Obviously, there was musicians that played on it, so it was a bit of a challenge. It was hard for me to get into that zone and kind of do that, but it was a really fun experience, and I really learned a lot making the record. And I'm happy it's out, and that I could put that aside and then move on to other things. But yeah.
So you're touching on political, cultural, socio-cultural, political things in your music, such as you got 3 tracks called "Peace Won't Last."
Peace won't keep.
Peace won't keep.
Yeah.
So why won't peace keep? You say?
It was just
yeah.
I mean, I want to believe in that, and it's not even to sound like negative or anything. I think because the whole line is peace won't keep, so to speak, won't heal much. So it more touches on the fact that we like to talk about it a lot, but we don't actually do the actions in order to make these types of things happen, you know. So it's kind of more referencing that aspect of it, you know. I believe in that it could happen, you know, but peace is one version of it, you know. Liberation is the other one, you know. Like, things can be peaceful, but if like, for example, a people is not liberated, then I'm not sure that, you know, you can actually attain that type of scenario where you can actually have real peace, you know. So it's kind of touching on the fact that, like, I think in general we like to think of the idea, but we don't act on it, you know. So this kind of, you know, I was thinking a lot about that when I was making the record. I would like those 3 songs actually.
Yeah, are they like a story together? It's anguish, liberation, and
yeah, I mean, I think like that song was one of those songs that's more directed to what was happening, or what is still happening in Palestine. Yeah. I think that's what influenced that song a lot. It's not directly referencing it, but I think for me it was something that touched me very deeply. It still does, and it's something I take to heart. So it made me obviously think about a lot of these types of things, and it's something I've always thought about. And I think, you know, you're saying, you know, that record talks about social political stuff, and I think that's just part of who I am. I think it's part of who a lot of people are, and I just can't get away from it. And that song was, you know, was directly influenced by what's happening in Gaza. I really think about these things quite often, and I try to put myself in that position. So I don't try and tell other people how to do things, but I just want to make sure that I'm trying to do the best I can in order to make sure that I'm doing my part to, you know, to help in any way that I can, you know.
What would you say that citizens and governments can do to help keep peace and like for the environment and?
I think it starts for me. I think it's about the dialogue first. You know, you need to have a dialogue between the government and the people, and I think it starts at home as well too. You know, and because there are so many things happening in the world, and it could be very overwhelming. But I think the important thing is to start at home with dialogue to make sure that, you know, things that you can affect change where you live, and I think that's the first place to start. So if you want to start talking about peace, or you want to start talking about equality, and if you want to start changing things around you, I think you need to start at home and actually affect the change directly. And then, you know, through that, then you can help out internationally as well. You know, what can governments do also is, like, you know, they can stop sending arms to fund wars in other nations, or funds, you know. So I think, you know, that would be a good first step, you know.
Yeah. So when you write music, is it first text or the beat that you first come with?
Generally, it's because like I started as more of a guitar player and musician first, so I tend to use, and the music is what usually comes first. and then the words will come after. But in the case of Peace Won't Keep, that actually that one line kind of started everything, and then the song built up from there. So that was one of those rare moments that kind of happened. But generally, it's like it'll either start with like a sample or a drum beat or a bass line, for example, and then kind of the idea snowballs from there.
What inspires you when picking samples?
It's a feeling, really. I don't like sample picking is like it's digging, right? So it's just I try to find things that interest me and that make me go, oh, you know what, that could be, you know, you make a little bank of information and you kind of put things aside, and then eventually you go back to them when you're working on music. And it's nothing specific. It could be anything, really, as long as I feel like it's kind of like moving me in a certain way, then that's I kind of just, you know, I kind of follow my instinct on that, basically.
Yeah. So does it differ, like if you first start with the text or first start with the music?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. You know, like when you're starting with, it's basically when you're starting with the text, you're kind of like creating, let's say, a verse. Let's say you're writing a verse. You're kind of fitting the music to fit what the rhythm and the flow of that verse is going to be. So it'll affect the way you approach the song. And then when you're doing it the opposite way, when you're creating the music first, you kind of tend to basically fit in. At least for me, this is how it works for me. But like I just try and fit in. I try to use the rhythm as the most important thing in general for me. So I try and fit in the rhythm in the best way that I can with the music that's available there, and it kind of helps me when I'm writing lyrics and stuff, because it's kind of like a puzzle piece. You know, you're trying to fit the words into this puzzle, and through that new things develop. And I kind of, you know, it's kind of surprising sometimes what can come out of that, and I think it's kind of fun trying to figure out that the pattern or how to fit the pieces of that puzzle together.
So when you're writing lyrics with the rhythm, you said it's helping, but when you're deciding on which words to pick and rhyming, for example, how do you feel is the best way to make a rhyme fit the rhythm? Like, can you feel forced when you pick certain words, or like do you rework the same text many times?
Well, like both those things basically, but I mean, words inherently have their own rhythmic pattern in them. So sometimes there are certain words that I want to use and that I make sure that, you know, like I try to fit them in. Sometimes it just doesn't work, you know. It's like putting a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't always make sense. But inherently, I think words have rhythm in them, right? So they kind of, for me, it's hard to say exactly how it happens, because sometimes I'm surprised when the song is finished and it's been written and like things are happening that way. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you exactly how it happens, but I'm always grateful when it does. You know, like I feel like, okay, whew, I made it through. But I think what happens is, usually for me, is I'll start with a specific word sometimes, and that like will open up the door to like, okay, this is where things are gonna go, you know. And then I reference my own rhythmic, you know, library that I have within me, and then I kind of work from there to make things happen. But a lot of the times it just takes like one word or one sentence, and then like from there things kind of, as you keep adding words, like the rhythm will change, and there'll be like an ebb and flow of things, you know. And that's the way it works for me. I'm sure it works for, there's so many ways to do things, and I don't know if I'm doing things in like a more classical way in terms of hip hop and in terms of writing rhymes, but for me, it really important for that first line is it really makes everything. It really catapults me into like writing the rest of the song.
Is it similar or different, the time it takes to finish a song from start to finish? Or does that vary a lot between the songs?
Yeah, it varies a ton, actually. This album was pretty cool because, I mean, I generally, when I write music, it does take me a while to like finish from start to finish, like to finish a song. But there's been a couple of songs on this album where, like Pity Party and Zero Goes, those songs they came out really fast. I didn't really have to think much about it. It just, things kept going, and I wasn't asking too many questions, and I felt really connected to those songs, and that was one of those rare moments that it actually happened like quite quickly. But it varies tremendously, and I would say like for this record it's probably 50-50. Things happen really quickly for some tracks, and other songs like Peace Won't Keep took a while to do. What else took a while? I think Kind to Be Kind took a while. That was a really long one, actually. I kind of was scratching my head on that to the point where at some point I wasn't sure if I was going to put it on the record or not, but there was this final thing that clicked in like the second half of the song that made me feel like, okay, yeah, like now this feels to me feels complete.
Yeah. So perhaps if you would have felt different that it's not done yet, like as an artist, do you like compose sort of library of unreleased things and then have to choose from?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have hard drives full of ideas and songs and things like that, and that's kind of how like the album came about, you know, too. Like there's some of the songs had been written already, and when I say written, like I mean like, you know, they weren't fully finished, but you know the idea was there. So like Longshore, for example, is a song I probably wrote like that's probably the oldest song on that on the record. I probably wrote that like two years ago, thinking like, okay, whatever, you know, I had it in the drive, and there's tons of ideas like that. So when I was compiling them for the record, I was trying to like find things that made sense together, and then there was some like surprises. Like Peace Won't Keep was like a surprise that kind of just came out. That was like, I wrote that as I was putting together the album and stuff. So yeah, it's I think as somebody who creates, whether it's music or painting or, you know, you kind of tend to like go in there and like do a bunch of things, create a bunch of songs, put them aside, and then like sometimes, you know, you don't realize maybe in the moment that it's going to be something that you're going to use. You might not even like it in the moment, but maybe you revisit it in a few months or in a year, and you're like, you know what, there was something there. I'm seeing it now, but I didn't see it before. And that happens a lot, I think, for me personally. And you know, you always get a different perspective when you pull away from something too. So that's why I think it's important, even if you're thinking like it's not worth writing or like spending the time doing that, I think it's important that you still sit down every day and you start writing things, because the more you do that, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
You know,
so is it the same when you're making a music video, and as if you're writing a song and if you're touring and performing? Like these are very different creative processes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. In terms of music videos, I mean, I can't really speak too much to that. I mean, I've done 2 for this record, and the only thing I thought about when I was doing that was I just wanted to keep things simple and direct. But let's say for the live show, for example, yeah, that's a whole other thing, right? So for the live show, I'm playing with a band, and you know, the project is me writing all the stuff, but when it comes to the live show, it's kind of like a team effort, right? We all kind of get together and make it happen, and it is a creative endeavor, because in the sense, like, you know, when you're creating a live show, you're trying to create an experience. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with the live show. And then so basically the way you pick the songs, the order of the songs, and then also having fun too, where you add things that are on the record, you know, a few jams here and there, a few sound parts. And you know, we have a whole lighting setup too with projections and stuff. So we kind of take that aspect of it really seriously, and because we want to make sure that you leave with like, oh man, that was like something I hadn't seen before. Or like, you know, when we played in a record store last night, and our goal was to like make it like an experience where people go, wow, I can't believe like they were able to pull that off in a record store, you know. So that's kind of it's a really fun creative process. I mean, I really, really enjoy playing live. You know, it's one of my favorite things about being a musician, to be honest.
Yeah. So tonight will be your 3rd gig here in Gothenburg.
Yeah.
In 3 days. Is that exhausting? And how do the vibes between these venues differ, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of the first night we played a more like, you know, we played a cafe Hängmattan, and it's more of like a venue like here today at 𝘚𝘃𝙀. It's more of like a regular venue, and the vibes, I mean, they differ, but it has a lot to do with like the vibes start when you walk through the door and you start dealing with the people that work there, and so far it's been really great. And I think like we always appreciate when like people are nice because it makes things go a lot smoother. And then, you know, yesterday, like I said, we played in a record store, so that's a very completely different vibe, and they all have their character to it, you know. And it could be like, I don't think it could be a little exhausting, but it's the kind of thing that like 3 shows in 3 days is not that much, because we've toured a lot. So we've done like, you know, in 30 days like 27 shows type of thing, you know, like with driving and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it gets long because you're doing a lot of waiting around and stuff, but like once like you're like an hour away from like playing the show, I think there's something that kicks in, and like you're on this type of like adrenaline, right? So like you kind of forget like that your ankle hurts, or you kind of forget that like you're tired, or that you didn't eat or whatever, and you kind of just go through it. And I'm always surprised because like the last 2 days, because with the jet lag and stuff, I think like before the first show, like I was like quite tired, but as soon as we got to the venue, we started setting things up, it's like I was a different person, you know. So it's kind of weird how that stuff works. Like once you need to like get into like, you know, playing mode, I think your body just takes over and it just tells you, it does its thing, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if arriving a couple of days earlier helps with the jet lag, but it seems more like it's an adrenaline rush that kicks in.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it definitely helps a little bit with the jet lag, but like jet lag's a weird thing. You never know how it's gonna work, or even if you try and fall, okay, I'm gonna not sleep till later at night, it doesn't really, it's a whole change for your body. So I think like no matter what you try and do, you try to do your best to make sure that you can like, you know, feel okay, but you're always gonna have this tiredness. And plus, you know, you're playing shows, so you're always finishing late, you're going to bed late, and you're kind of waking up early, so
yeah.
You know, your body, like we were talking about earlier, it's not much sleep, so yeah, I don't think there's a way around that.
I think tonight you're closing this _𝘚𝙚𝙚𝙚.
Yeah.
But the other gigs, they were a bit earlier in the day.
Yeah.
How does that differ in like the crowd and for yourself?
Yeah, in terms of the crowd, I mean, it's hard to say because the festival's going on, I feel like people are jumping around everywhere. So the crowds in general so far have been great. It's been like pretty busy at all the shows, which has been awesome. In terms of like waiting, it's like, yeah, when you play last later at night, it's a long, like it can get a bit like daunting. Like for me, sometimes I get kind of anxious when I have to wait very long. Like when you get to a venue, you set up and you're playing an hour later, for example, I do appreciate that because it's like you don't have time to think. But when you're waiting for like, I don't know, it's like right now I think it's like 3 o'clock and we're gonna be there like, you know, waiting for 7 hours before we play. So you kind of, for me anyways, I kind of get anxious because I start overthinking about things. So you have to learn how to manage that, you know, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes to do that. You know, it's like anything else. It's just about practice, and you start having your little rituals, and like, you know, you do your thing and you get ready, you know, to perform, you know. But yeah, it definitely varies a lot for sure.
So you mentioned preferring shorter time span for the setup. If you have different rituals for 7 hours or 1 hour, how does this differ?
Yeah, I mean the difference is like, if with the time that we have now, it's like I'll make sure like I'll have time to like eat like a few like 4 hours before the show type of things. I don't like to eat like too close before the show, and I like, you know, you'll stretch, you know, and so like you'll have those types of things. When you have like an hour before, like you set up and you have an hour to play, you don't really have time to think about that. So like maybe you go to the washroom, you go outside, you know, you have a drink, and then you're ready to go. So like your brain reacts very differently. So when I have that much time, I try to make sure that I take the time to do things properly. Like stretching, for example, for me is a good way to like kind of like calm myself down, and like I don't really meditate, but it's kind of like a form of that for me. And I make sure to do that, and I also make sure because I want to feel loose on stage as well. So I kind of try to do that, and eating at a proper time makes a huge difference. Because there's some shows where like I don't eat because it's too close to the show, and I don't end up eating for the whole night after, because like we play the show, you're a bit high on adrenaline, so you're just like, you know, you're not really hungry generally. So that kind of happens a lot.
So can that lead to burnout if you're playing 27 days out of 30 once, you said? Yeah,
because we play with the guys who play in a psychedelic progressive band called Atsuko Chiba. And yeah, I mean, it could get, you're gonna get tired, you know, for sure, and it's gonna weigh on you. There's no way around that. So I mean, it's just about how you deal with it, and you try and do little things that you can to like make sure like eating healthy is probably like a very, very important thing, like because it's very easy to get carried away with eating like just junk food on the road. So you know, you try to make sure that you eat proper things, and like you maybe take some vitamins and stuff to make sure that like you can do the best you can while you're out there.
Yeah. How has food been now in Gothenburg this week?
The food's been great, actually. Yeah, we've had really, really good food. I'm kind of forgetting. I'm blanking a bit. Oh, we ate at this place on the first or second night called Shangri-La, and the food was excellent. We had some some seafood as well. That's been really good. I think in general the food's been great, and yeah, I've been having a good time with that as well.
Yeah. Did you get to see any other artists before?
Because we've been running around a lot, I saw Virginie B play, I saw Torn play, but those were like the shows that we were also playing, so we haven't had time to kind of jump around too much. I think they were called, I saw a band here last night actually, I think they were called Melt, and that was really cool. But I hope tonight, maybe, because we start later, we might have time beforehand to catch a couple of bands and just walk around and see what's happening. But sometimes it's hard, like when you're playing too, like you kind of want to be focused, so it's hard to like want to go around and do a bunch of stuff. Once we're done here tonight, since it's our last night, we're definitely going to go out to the late show and like make sure like we can have a good time at the end of a nice 3 days here.
Yeah, so it kind of blocks the flow to multitask a bit.
Yeah, I mean it's not that it blocks the flow, it's just like it's hard to like concentrate, and like I don't want to get carried away being at another show. I want to make sure that like I'm locked in and I'm prepared for the show as well, because when I'm playing, for me, like, and I think for all of us when we're playing, like we try our best to give our 100% every night, and I think that's really important, and things don't always work out the way you plan them to anyway, but at least if you go up there and you really give it your all, like honestly do that, I think it comes off, and I want to make sure I'm always ready to do that. So I try to put myself in a position. It's not always the case, but I try to put myself in a position to do that.
Yeah. Is it anything you want to add, or are you feeling ready to enjoy the town, the final days? Yeah,
no, I mean, nothing to add. This is our first time in Sweden, so that's been really cool. Getting to know like the local culture. We did go to the spa. I think that's a Swedish thing. So I actually never go back home, but it was nice to go here and kind of relax. And that was one way for preparing for the show yesterday. Really like taking it easy and like a lot of quiet and like a lot of trying to think about nothing. You know what I mean? We've had a great time, and we're happy to be here, and I thank you for the interview also. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for meeting. It's been a great talk.
Yeah, thank you.
So good luck tonight, and hope you have a great time.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.